we're going to have this conversation. Did the ushers already give out index cards? Yes, so you can write questions as we're talking. We're going to take a moment to take questions. We'll set up one stand for those of you who are not afraid to verbalize it. Otherwise, you can write your question down and we'll take it and read it in a second, in a moment. I want to start here. Bishop, you have your mic, so whenever you want to jump in, please, Bishop. This is one of the things that's very important to Bishop and I, so she will jump in whenever she has something. All right, firstly, I want to start here. So I preached a couple of weeks from the subject, Are You Okay? And I opened with an understanding of what mental health was, right? So I want to give that definition so we're all on the same page. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Mental health is the thing that affects how we think, how we feel, how we act, and how we behave. So for us to really understand, it is the thing that determines how you handle stress, how you connect with others, and about the choices you make in your life. So for those of you who are like, we're Christians, this is not for a Sunday morning, you live, you make choices, you interact with people, so your mental health is important because it is determined how you do those things through your mental health. So I want to start here, Aaron. There is such a stigma when it comes to mental health awareness, especially in our communities, Black communities, Christian communities. Can we start with where did that stigma come from? And how do we as a community move to better the understanding of why these type of conversations are important?
Well, praise the Lord, everybody.
Praise the Lord.
One, I just want to thank Overseer and Pastor Washington for this opportunity. I'm blessed and humbled. I bring greetings from Grace Cathedral International, Pastor Novella and Bishop Robert Harris, where I attend. So it's a blessing to be here. So I just wanted to start with that. But the stigma, around mental health in our community is that we don't get help. We go to the altar, we pray about it, and we don't tell our business out in the street, right? We keep it indoors and we keep it to ourselves because that's the safest thing to do. Unfortunately, we have folks that are suffering, not getting the help that they need. And it's startling because we have significant increase in death by suicide amongst blacks and amongst black males. And we've been seeing a prominent black male in the spiritual body and in a prominent office such as legislatures and things like that. So it's definitely concerning in terms of how many people are dying by suicide. So this conversation is very important. And not to mention post-pandemic or in pandemic or pre-pandemic, whatever we're in right now, that since then we have seen a significant increase in anxiety and depression.
So what are some of the effects, right? And he said it quite plainly that most of us were raised to keep things in our homes, keep things to ourselves. They would say things such as like, what happens in your house stays in your house. And they meant that quite literally. What happens in your house stays in your house. And you have to figure out how to deal with it, and it kind of comes out in behaviors and other things. What are some of the effects that this stigma has had on our communities?
Tremendous effect. We have people, like as I mentioned, dying by suicide. We have people that are dealing with anxiety and depression, and also affecting our children. I didn't put in the bio, but I'm also a school social worker here in Brooklyn, in Brownsville, and find that students are unable to function and engage in educational activities because of anxiety and depression and things that they've seen at home. So what you do as a parent affects your child.
And because what your parents did affected you. And we don't like to admit that because it's like a shameful thing for our parents, but most of us, our parents did the best they could. And if we're in a generation that doesn't believe in mental health, can you imagine what your parents, the ones who came before you, what kind of generation they were raised in? So it's affecting our children, right? Because now our children are struggling with sharing and not really understanding the emotions that they go through. So that's key. What does it do to our self-esteem as a black people?
And it significantly lowers our self-esteem,
Yeah.
ability to talk, ability to feel that we can meet the part. So that affects your work performance. So you may not feel effective at work because you don't have that self-esteem, you don't have that ability and trust in yourself. Yeah. So it covers every area of your life, and spiritually as well. You feel that maybe God is not listening to you, but you just may not. There's people who don't have the capacity to even get out of bed to come to church. Yeah. And just doesn't have the ability to get up, to brush their teeth. Everyday functional things that we are blessed to do, there are people that are so low and depressed and unable to, just physically unable to do it. I know people don't understand that with depression is a chemical in our bodies that is just not enough serotonin. Your body does not create enough of it, and you're unable, it's painful. You ever been in pain? It's painful to get out of bed. That's how low depression can bring you.
Yeah. So that's something that I think most people can really relate to. What are ways that we know, right? I said last week before, it's okay to not be okay. What are the signs that something might be wrong? What should we be looking for?
Well, so one thing I tell people to look out for is if you haven't seen someone to come to church in a while, check on them. Check on them, see if they're okay. And not from a place of being nosy, but generally just checking on them that everything is well. Also, if you notice that if at home or a friend or family, you notice that they're not eating as much or eating too much, right? Those are signs also. Not sleeping as much or oversleeping. Irritability. Now, there's symptoms among black men, and I work specifically with black men, that black men with anxiety and depression show to be a little bit more irritable because we show our anxiety and depression differently, and we may not even recognize that we're anxious because, men are not supposed to have any emotions but happy or sad, and that's it. Not even sad, happy or angry. We're not allowed to be sad, unfortunately.
Yeah. So sleeping too much, not sleeping enough,
yes.
A sudden change in your eating habits,
right.
how you treat people. There are a lot of people sometimes you just don't know what version of them. Bishop and I was just talking about it on Wednesday. You don't know what version of that person you're going to get when you see them. And of course, you have an attitude with them, but you don't take a moment to realize that maybe this person is struggling with something, right? What I think, and you can tell me if you agree, what I think one of the biggest problems in our community is a lack of compassion for people.
I talk about that a lot. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're having a lot more conversations around mental health in the black community, which I'm very happy about. And it's talk a lot about self-love and self-care and all of those things, a lot of inner work, which is great. But you could love yourself so much and still treat people nasty. You understand? Especially in the body of Christ, it's important that we are kind. And I talk about being kind and compassion, being aware, self-aware, right? That's also showing compassion of others and other people and being courteous. All those things don't cost you anything, but that's a part of the self-love, how you treat others.
Yeah. See, I've never heard anyone express it like that, because when you say self-love, it's all about me. But what if self-awareness also means how you treat the people around you?
Absolutely, and showing compassion. When you think about someone maybe going through something, you'll treat them a little bit different. You don't even have to know. I just operate as if I don't know what that person is going through, so let me treat them a little bit more kindness, and that goes a very long way.
So where's the line with that between not knowing what they're going through and also letting them get away with abuse?
See, that's a whole nother story, right? So, because there's something called boundaries as well,
okay,
right? And that's something that we have to learn, and that's part of self-love. If we didn't get kind of love growing up, we try to look for love in different places, which may not be the most healthiest, and we may not have healthy boundaries. So we allow people to step all over us in the name of love. We do all of those things that may not be healthy. But part of self-love and mental wellness, because I'm a big proponent of mental health, but also mental wellness, and that's two different things. I'll talk about that.
What's the difference?
So mental wellness encompasses going to church, meditation, pray, whatever it is that you do, treating people kindly, exercising, because taking care of our health is also important. What we eat is also important. How we think is also important. So if you have a lot of negative thoughts, then you really need to address that, right? There are people that are really dealing with a lot of things from their childhood, from trauma, from growing up, things like that. Negative thoughts, people talking badly about you. You heard that your whole life. So it's really hard to function when someone says, you know what, I love you, bro.
Yeah.
You'd be like, no, you don't. Like your brain tells you, no, you don't love me.
Yeah.
Because you've been hearing that your whole life. And we go back to growing up. You know, our parents did the best that they could, but they didn't show love. I see a lot of clients that their parents never showed them love, didn't tell them I love them. But you got a roof over your head, right? Right, that's right. But we understand now that children now need a lot. Roof is, and food and shelter and light is also important. But building your child's self-esteem, positive affirmations, all of that is important. And we see adults right now that didn't get that when they were younger.
Yeah. Can we talk just a little bit more about how do you defeat those negative thoughts? A lot of times when people say things to me or repeat things that people have said to me about me, half the time it resonates with me because the truth of the matter is most negative thoughts I've already had about myself. Right? So when you say it to me that someone said, I connect to it because I've already had it.
Exactly.
So how do we defeat those negative thoughts about ourselves?
That's an ongoing work. That's something that for some people it may take their entire life to manage those negative thoughts. But the key is awareness.
Okay.
I've been told that you're shy. Why don't you talk up more? Why don't you? It's only God that brought me to this place of being on TV and radio. But I spoke these things. I said, God, I want you to elevate me as a black male therapist to show our people about mental health. But ordinarily, I'll be in the corner. To myself, I'm very shy. I don't really like but I constantly manage those negative thoughts. That I'm not a good public speaker. I manage all of those thoughts and tell myself the devil's a liar. I could do it. Yeah. Right. So it's constant work. People say, I can't believe that. Yeah, I do, but I still work through it anyway. Yeah. So it's an ongoing thing, being mindful about those negative thoughts, whether you have to say a prayer to refute it, but tell yourself that I declare that that's a lie. Yeah. Yeah, right? Yeah. So constantly positively telling yourself those things. We have to be our biggest cheerleader. Right. We pray, and prayer is very important, and we also how we speak to ourselves. And setting boundaries with those people that are speaking negatively to you. Yeah, because we don't realize that we take on the negativity that we surround ourselves with. I don't want to go a place and every time I'm with you, you're talking negative about something that I'm connected to, someone I love, because what happens is I begin to feel that same way about what I've heard. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing we have to do is manage expectations, manage the negativity around you. Sometimes say no. I know what the conversation is already going to be like when we hang out. I'm going to say no. I won't go out with you today. So managing those negatives, switching out those negative thoughts for positive affirmations. That's kind of where I am now is where I'm constantly just reminding myself of God's word over my life, right? And I think the problem is most people don't have that awareness of the word of God because when you feel like, well, I'm weak, but you realize the word says, I'm strong. I'm a conqueror. You have to replace that negative thoughts with what God actually said about you. So we now realize, right, we're being self-aware, we're self-reflecting. I feel like something is wrong. I'm oversleeping, I'm overeating. I find myself to be irritable. I find myself to be miserable. I just can't get out the bed. I can't find the positive words to say about myself. I've identified it. What is the next step actually after I've said, okay, there is a problem? Right? Someone right now is saying, like, yeah, they're talking about me. Right. What is their next step? So the next step is to identify what am I going to do about it, right? Somebody in here may be saying, this is speaking to me right now, so what should I do now? Question is do you want to talk to a therapist about it? Do you want to speak spiritual leadership, to have a conversation about it? A lot of people don't know that there are Christian counselors. I have a lot of friends that are pastors and are therapists, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to have. And they bring scriptures into the sessions, and you can bring scriptures to the sessions, and it's a beautiful thing. So you can actually seek a therapist. If you have insurance through your employer or your parents or partners, your spouses, then most insurance companies cover mental health. So you can reach out to your insurance provider and find out what your copay is. And copays range between 0 to the highest I've seen is maybe $30. And some, like I said, it's none at all, but also knowing where you can go. New York City Well, that's where you can text, or a website. They also have a list of providers that you can seek out. The issue is availability.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big challenge because people of color prefer a therapist that looks like them. And that's really important that we have that relatability. If you're dealing with oppression at work, you may not want to see a white therapist because you may want to talk about some of the issues that you see and that you're dealing with oppressive supervisors, microaggressions, just disrespectful. So oftentimes you may want someone that looks like you.
Yeah. And the key thing that Aaron is saying is seek professional help, seek someone who is qualified, not mama and them, not cousin,
Yes.
because what happens is people sometimes mentor you out of their own unhealed trauma. And you're talking to them, you're telling them your business, and you're wondering why you're not healed. It's because they've mentored you out of a broken state. So these people who are professional, they are trained to mentor you or speak to you, guide you from a more professional. If you're not careful, sometimes the person you confide in, that issue becomes your issue too. So you want to seek professional help. I'll never forget sitting at a table with Archbishop, I believe it was Jarrell Solomon, Bishop Crow, pastor at the time, and myself, and he said, these people need help. He said, and I mean real help. We ain't qualified for. We were sitting at the conference table. He said, never before have I seen like this before. He said, these people need help. And we all laughed, and I thought about that as I was like preparing for this. I'm like, it's true. Things are changing. Times are changing. My son has a teacher, and he was coming home explaining to my wife and I, he's like, it's not a he, it's not a she. They call them mix. Is that right, Kayla? MX. That's the suffix before their name is MX. So it's Mix Solomon or Mix Washington. It's not. And I was like, I don't know how to prepare myself to have these conversations. And what we would have done a long time ago is just not have the conversation. But now my wife and I had to go read. We had to go figure out, how do we have these conversations with our children? We're blaming games and movies and music for everything, but the reason why that stuff has replaced is because we don't talk to our children. The TVs, the iPads, that stuff has raised our children, and you're wondering why they're so violent. Why do they curse? Why? Because you've allowed iPads to raise them. So have conversations. Have conversations. I know it's crazy in my house because we have conversations about everything. And my oldest, I'm so glad he's not here. He is a non-stop talker. I mean, he wants to know. He needs to know why. I'll say something, but why do you say it like that to me? And all that stuff, it challenges me to have conversation. So let's learn how parents, grandparents, whoever, interactions, let's learn how to have better conversations with our children, also with each other. You have a problem with someone, right? What if you just have a conversation with them? Hey, you really offended me. You really hurt my feelings. There's something about the way I feel like you're treating me. No one can tell you you're wrong about how you feel, right? We can negotiate what I meant by what I did, but I can't negotiate how I made you feel. Explain to me how I've made you feel. And let's talk to people. Let's stop talking about people. Does that make sense? So once we've done that, we've got all these tools, we got all these ways we understand something is wrong, we're working through it, we're managing, we're getting help. What are some of the healthy tools on dealing with mental health? What are some things we can do? What will help us, will point us in the right direction? Say we're not ready for therapy, right? That's just something, therapy is a bad word in the church. What if we're not ready for that? What are some of the tools that we can practice right now by ourselves that'll help lead us in the right direction and maybe one day be ready for therapy?
Right, that's the other thing too, because some people are unaware that they may be the challenge. I won't say the issue, but they may be the challenge. And they wondering why everybody doesn't talk to them, or it may be just them, but just recognizing that something is wrong with what I'm doing. So I want to challenge everybody to look inward. Pretend we're in a therapy session right now. I want you to look inward at yourself. What are some of the nasty, ugly things about you?
Good grief. If you need help, I can help you.
See, and I tell my clients all the time, I said, you don't have a mirror in front of you. You don't know how you show up. How do you show up? And not on Sunday. Everybody looks beautiful, might I add. But how do you show up Monday through Friday at your job? Does your job know that you're a Christian? Does it shine through you? That's important. Because unfortunately, I know a lot of people that don't attend church but are really, really nice. So, we have a duty that it shines through us. So I want you to be introspective and look at yourself. How do I show up? At work? In my marriage? With my children? Would you marry yourself? And I'm pausing for dramatic effect because I do that with my clients because I really want you to think. Because we are going. We leave. You're in here now, but you're thinking about that roast that you got seasoned at home. So we just going. We don't have time to sit still and really reflect on the things that we're doing. We're in a fast pace. You know, my bishop in my church was talking about the AI, the artificial intelligence, that we are moving way too fast. I'm a college professor at Adelphi University. I don't know if my students really wrote the paper or was it an AI that did it. We are moving way too fast, so we have to slow down. My favorite word is intention.
Yeah.
And I'm talking slow right now intentionally because I want it to resonate. So really slow down and reflect on how do I show up? What areas do I need to work on? We all have areas we need to work on. And that's part of mental wellness. Because everybody don't need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
But you need to be mentally well. If you doing everything for everybody, and by the skin of your teeth you made it here today, praise God for that. But you need to reassess and set some boundaries. Yeah. Okay, so it's really assessing where do I fall short. We have people here that are smiling right now but are depressed inside.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Praying for a breakthrough. But your breakthrough may be talking to a therapist, some medication, a vacation. All of that.
Yeah, and I think also it takes a level of honesty too.
Absolutely.
Because if you're looking inward, but you're not going to be honest about what you see, then you're wasting time.
Right. You got to be honest.
Yeah, because most time it's like, well, he's to blame. I act like that because she acts like that towards me. Not really being honest about what I feel, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It takes honesty.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that most people will struggle with.
Yeah, because when I do marriage counseling as well, and when I ask them about, what some of the challenges, and it's but he. I said, I ain't ask you about he. What about you?
Right.
It's easy to point the finger at someone else and not. The only reason why I stopped because I didn't ask you that. What is the reason? So really being honest with yourself, and honest sometimes means that you're going to have to take off that makeup.
Yep.
Take off that makeup. Even if you don't have none on, people still wear makeup, even with none on. Because the reality is that, you know what? I'm not happy. And that's a very hurtful thing to be in the body of Christ and saying that you're depressed. That doesn't make sense. How I go to church, I pray, I have a title, but I'm depressed and anxious. And there's a lot of other mental illnesses that, besides anxiety and depression, that we don't talk about. There's personality disorders.
Yes, God.
Those are not so easily diagnosable, but you see it. Narcissistic personality disorder, right? those are a lot of things. There's a lot that we don't talk about. There's schizophrenia, right? And there's bipolar disorder, and it's a genetic component. So it's important to know your family history, right? So ask Big Mama about the past, about family members, because some things are genetic. And saints that are single, if you're going on a date, ask them about their family history. It's so important.
On the first date, you asking that?
Maybe the second. Maybe the second.
I don't know. I haven't
But
dated
some
in
things,
a long time,
some
but I think
things
that's
some things are generational.
Okay.
Some things are generational, right? It not only just through observation and learned behavior, but it actually through DNA.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
So, some people may not be aware and they connect with someone and they're not really in alignment mentally, physically.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I want to shift, Bishop, you good with that answer? You good with that answer? Yeah. I want to shift a little bit to grieving. We just came out of the pandemic, and I know so many people lost so much during the pandemic. I remember I lost my grandmother, my wife lost her mom, and that was just like, and even to this day, people are losing. That's something that most black people, especially, that we're struggling with. So I wanted to know, what does healthy grieving look like, if there's such thing, right? Is there? No. Okay. So this all grieving is unhealthy, or? No,
it's not. It's not healthy or unhealthy. It's just a process,
Okay.
and grieving is not a linear process. People would say, "I thought I was over it." It's not something that you can possibly get over. It's how you manage and work through it. And I think people get hard on themselves, thinking that why am I still feeling this way? I think it's important to seek counseling or group. There's, for those that lost, mothers that lost their children, there's different grief groups. Those are very, very helpful to help you manage and get through it. But grief is a very linear, not a linear process. It's up and down, and it's really working through it, taking it day by day. And I think that's one of the biggest things I tell my clients is, if you had a good day today, if you had a good moment, honor that moment, and develop some tools to manage if you go and feeling a different way. Sometimes I encourage clients to kind of create, whether it be some type of memorial to remember the person. And it doesn't have to be a significant date. It could be any time you want to do it. But creating tools to manage and get through the healing process. And it's not going to be like just straight line.
Yeah. But not only grieving losing people, right? I'm finding that as I'm talking to people, some people are grieving their childhood, right? Things that happened in their childhood. I think we forget that it's not just a loss of a person. It could be a loss of a time. It could be a loss of an emotion. How are we handling people who don't know how to heal from things that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago? And I don't want to be insensitive, like, oh, it's been 10 years. You should already be over it. But is that the truth? Should it still be an issue 10 years later?
I mean, I guess a healthy way is kind of being able to transition. But if you're unaware that you're still connected to that loss from whether it be childhood or an experience, people loss of even a job. Some people have really prominent or positions that they really lost, really enjoyed. They lost it and never really recovered from that. Mm-hmm. And people, my wife does assessments for people for Social Security, and she hears stories of people who have lost their job and unable to work because of depression, because of the loss of that job. And it's something that just triggers in their brain where they just can't move past it. Yeah. And it's not, even if you say, come on, pick up, come on, get up, it's just your brain just get unable to do it. So it's really recognizing that, wow, something is really wrong. And sometimes, as a therapist, I help clients connect to their childhood because they may not be aware, by asking questions about their childhood, or if a parent passed away when you were younger, or how was life growing up? And they really start to connect the dots and see, wow, I did not even realize that. And you hear a lot of clients say, I didn't realize that, I didn't get that. I didn't get that love, or that time where I had to grow up really, really early and never had a chance to have a childhood. I hear a lot about that, where people had to grow up before their time. Mm-hmm. And that loss of that child, had to take care of older siblings and things like that, never had a chance to be a child. Their parents relied on them to be everything for everybody at a young age. And then grow up with a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
And their siblings may wonder, well, why do you dislike me so much? And they don't realize that it's because I had to be everything, and I didn't get a chance to be a child.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And I always say there's always a root to every corrupt fruit. You know what I mean? The fruit sometimes looks bad, it tastes bad, but you don't realize that it started from the root. And examining people's roots. Like, let me find out what happened, right? That's something that's very evident in our communities. What if we feel like no support is helping us? I've seen a therapist and just something is just not right. What's next with that?
Well, one, are you being completely transparent with the therapist?
Okay.
Again, it goes back to that inward work. Maybe the therapist is not the right one for you. Also, it's not every therapist is going to connect with you or things like that. So possibly reassess, is this the right? Are you finding the therapist that is really specific to what you need? If it's dealing with grief, is it dealing with anxiety? There are therapists that specializes in particular things that you're going through. So if you're battling eating disorder, that's something that we don't talk about in the black community, but black people deal with eating disorders, anorexia and bulimia. So if you need a specific therapist, also finding one that's specific to that.
To your needs,
to your
issue.
needs, yeah.
All right, I want to ask this last question. Those of you who are writing questions, let's do that now. And can I get someone, Deacon Al, if you don't mind, and someone else, Dre, we can start collecting those questions. You don't have to put your name on the paper, but let's get some help today. I want you to understand that you can love Jesus and still need help. You can love Jesus and still have questions about what you're feeling. Please do not be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed about what you're feeling. So if you start writing those questions down now, we're going to collect them. The last question, and Bishop, if you have anything, what do you think the church's role should be with helping people in mental health? Because there are some people who will absolutely shun this idea. This is not a place for mental health, as if we aren't people who have minds because we go to church.
Right.
But what is the church's role in your understanding, or from your professional perspective?
Well, conversations like this, I just want to commend you again and just thank you for this opportunity. I think this is a beautiful experience for everyone to experience, because you may not even had an opportunity to even hear about therapy before or meet a therapist before. So I feel like this is an opportunity for people to kind of get experience, yes. Right? The first experience, like, okay, it's not so bad, or I heard some information about it. And then the second thing is, what can I do about it? But being open and honest about mental health, in church, and talking about that, it's like you just said, that it's real. It doesn't make you any less a believer, but it's actually, here to support and help you, in addition to every praying, fasting. Yeah. Right, this is an additional tool. Additional. So we still pray, we still fast, we still love the Lord, but God provides other methods also, and that's what I want you all to understand. Right. We have questions. I can't see online. I'm not really sure what my phone is, but those of you who are online, if you want to submit a question, somebody can work that for me. I know they'll see your name, but sometimes when you really need help, it doesn't matter who knows that you need the help. You know what I mean? So if you're online also, you can submit questions. Those of you who are in the building, let's submit questions. Are there any? Yes? Can we move quick? Collect. Lift your questions if you have them, please. Is Caleb around? Does he have my phone? Can I just get one? Because we're online, so I don't want to be too much dead space. So whatever you have, just bring me, and then you guys can keep bringing. Thank you, Deacon Al. I appreciate you. First question. Oh, I can't read. What's the difference? Okay, so if someone wants you to read, just go over again. What's the difference between mental health and mental wellness? So mental health is just taking kind of the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act, it being well, your mental health. So if that mental illness is the absence of mental health, right? And then mental wellness incorporates therapy, prayer, whether it be going to the gym, things like that. That's mental wellness. Exercising, just maintain, and then also exercising, because that also improves your mental health as well. So that's all mental wellness. Anything active, praying, those are things that helps with your mental health. Mental wellness.
And when you don't take care of your mental health, it develops into mental illness.
Yes. So the absence of health is illness.
Right.
So that's mental illness. So absence of, so you think of mental illness. So that's your schizophrenia, anxiety, depression, personality disorders. That's mental illness.
And these conversations are the first steps. That's something that Bishop said to me. She was like, this conversation, had we had conversations like this 10 years ago, who knows where we might be mentally? Who knows how much we would have grown if we would have just been open to having these type of conversations in this type of forum?
Yes.
You want to read on yours?
So I read, do you ever get healed? Wow. I'm going to pause for a moment for that one. So I feel like you get healed from an illness, right? Whether it be a cancer diagnosis, things like that. There's healing. So that's the physical part. But the mental part that with the diagnosis and the treatment and all you're going through, that's an ongoing healing after that. And I've seen people still deal with it after. Dealing with trauma growing up. I think people work through it and manage and develop tools, but it can show up. Maybe not as frequently as time go on, but it may show up. And part of your healing journey is not responding the way you used to.
Wow, yeah, that's good.
Right? So when we see people possibly lash out and things of that nature, we may not know the reason why. And it's because they still have healing to do or have not began the healing process for what they experience.
Yeah. And one way to never get healed is to never get help.
Right. So
thank you.
But that's for sure. So if you can't heal what you don't reveal.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you deal with or handle loneliness? So,
and the therapist, we always want to ask more questions. So, I would like to know the source of the loneliness. Is it isolation? Like, are you isolating yourself? Do you feel that no one is there to listen and support you? So, or just that you don't want to be bothered with anyone, you know? Or do people not be bothered with you? So, identifying the source of the loneliness. Is it not having a spouse or a children, you know, because that might be a reason why. So really identifying the source of the loneliness. And there are groups, again, to kind of find an activity that you enjoy, or a workout group, or a Christian group that you could attend, start engaging yourself in auxiliaries in the church and things like that to kind of increase your social skills.
Yeah. Don't separate yourself
Right.
and wonder why you're dealing with loneliness.
Right.
You never want to be around, you never want to be a part of something, and then you're wondering why you're never a part of something.
Right. But then again, like, that's the awareness, because again, it may be a reason why. It may be something deeper, because isolation is a indication of something.
Yeah.
Anxiety, depression. I just don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to be around anybody. And it may be a symptom of something else.
It's been 5 years since my wife died. I have 3 children. How do I make this adjustment? I have so much guilt.
I think, well, one thing I definitely want to encourage is how you processing the loss of your partner, how your children processing the loss of your partner, of their parent also. That's something I would definitely encourage, something a little bit more in-depth treatment on, to process where that guilt is coming from, working through that, and how to navigate what life looks like now, especially for children. Like I said, I work with children a lot, so really having a space for them to talk about it, because they may not want to talk to you, because they become kind of a parent, like, I don't want to worry my dad or anything like that, or so definitely maybe finding support for everyone. Everyone can benefit from support for something like that.
I think this is a really good one. If you have a partner that has never told you that they love you, how do you know that they love you? I know they feed me and I'm not sure if that works, but if you never heard the word I love you, how do you deal with that? Why do people not say I love you? And if you're married to someone who doesn't say it to you, how do you deal with that?
You know, it's interesting because they may have grown up in a house where they didn't say it, but you know, they didn't say it, but they showed, like I said earlier, through feeding. So what is their love language? Identifying what their love language is, because some it's things, buying things, some is quality time, some is doing things for, some is affection. But I'm wondering what connected you to the person in the beginning. Did they say it before and they're not saying it anymore? I mean, y'all walked down the aisle.
Yeah.
So what shifted? Why is he not saying it anymore? Or did he not say it at all? And if he didn't say it before, why are you asking for it now? Well, maybe you changed now, which is good. But now your partner's not in alignment now, so they need to know that you changed now, and that's a part of communication. So redefining your love, redefining what love looks like with your partner, and that's through open communication. Like, you know what? Let's sit down and have a conversation about our marriage and how you think. And I encourage my clients to do that. Let's talk about let's self-assess. How do you think our marriage is going? I'm going to challenge those that are married to go to your partner this evening, sit down with them, and how do you think our marriage is going? And this is no judgment. You're not going to get upset. I think you need to make the explicitly clear. Because in church, this therapist we talked about mental health, and I'm really trying to work on me. So what can I do better?
He said, "Don't be mad about what they say, though.
You cannot.
Don't open that door.
You cannot.
And then that's
so
you
need
go
to
through it, and you mad about what they
right.
say.
So you need to pray before you have this conversation, and come with an open mind, because you want to work, right? Everybody declared that they want to work on themselves. The worship was beautiful this morning, right? So everybody's feeling good. right. So you are ready to take on a new lease on life and learn about yourself and be more introspective, because you're leaving here different than when you came in. Yeah. Amen?
Yeah.
All right. It's quiet now. People, it's different. Listen, I'm making light of it, but I'm really serious. It's very difficult to hear about yourself. Yeah. But I told my wife, I like, if you have something to tell me in a Tiffany box, not in a hefty bag. That's how I operate. You don't got to sugarcoat it, but don't yell at me when you're telling me something.
Yeah.
So it can resonate with me. I don't understand yelling. So I want mine in a Tiffany box, so I can hear it. In a hefty bag, that's garbage. I ain't garbage.
That's good. That's good.
Some people operate differently. Tell your partner what you need. That's communication. Well, healthy communication.
Yeah. And believing yourself enough to know you need it.
To know what you need. I know what I need.
Yeah, because sometimes we devalue ourselves so much where you know what you need, but because you don't love yourself, you won't express what you need because you don't think you deserve it.
Right, but I'm also willing to hear what she needs as well. So it got to be mutuality.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people lose that. I ain't sugarcoating nothing no more, because you know what? You don't feel supported. So when it's mutuality, so she listens to what I said, because guess what? I'm going to give that same energy back to you.
Wow.
I'm going to reciprocate that. I ain't going to speak to you this old kind of way.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to resonate.
Yeah. My children miss their mom. How do I get my children to fully acknowledge those feelings?
How did you pass away?
Yeah, my children miss their deceased mom. How do I get my children to acknowledge those feelings?
I definitely encourage speaking to someone. especially children dealing with grief or loss of a parent. Studies show that, especially under the age of 12, children are more likely to be diagnosed with depression, especially
Under 12?
untreated. Under 12, at the loss of a parent, more likely to be diagnosed with depression. So I definitely encourage have them talk to someone. The younger children, have them engage in play therapy with the therapist and process those feelings. Oh, I got one right here.
Mm-hmm.
What are some suggestions for managing your triggers? How do you approach a loved one who may be opposed to the idea that they may need help?
Can you explain what a trigger is first? Because that's one of those buzzwords also.
Yes. So trigger is a very popular word that people say, oh, you triggered me. So trigger is literally a very involuntary or very emotional response to something that you've seen or experienced. Now, being angered by something is very different. So I think it's really knowing the difference between triggered and being angered or just being upset by something somebody said. Okay. So managing your triggers, if it's really truly a trigger that you're dealing with, it's getting to the source of why are you responding that way, right? If it's something that you haven't healed from, so really getting to the root of that, right? Because so oftentimes we respond to the fruit and not the root.
Yeah, that's good. We have someone on the...
If a person has already been diagnosed of mental illness, is it good, and they see a psychiatrist, should they also seek a therapist as well? Is it necessary to seek the therapist?
Well, so it depends on the diagnosis and the person. There's a lot of people that are just doing medication management.
That's what I do.
Yeah. If you feel that the medication is working well and is responding well and you're able to do what you need to do, that's great. But if there's also life challenges, then the therapist would really help you kind of talk about that, because whether it be nurse practitioner or psychiatrist, that's once a month or something like that. So you may need someone in between time to process and talk, just life changes, things that you're dealing with. So it's beneficial.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I love you, Sheila. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Questions. How do you know your numbers? By that, I mean, there are a lot of people who accept stereotypes because they hear, let's just say, for instance, black men don't take care of their children. But the numbers don't necessarily reflect that. So where's the best place to go to find those type of numbers for those type of questions? So you can combat certain things, and where shouldn't you be getting those numbers from? Because if you look at social media and different places, there are a lot of things floating around, a lot of statistics, percentages, but you don't know what's right or wrong. So where's the best place to go?
Right. So I actually did a conversation on black men showing up for their children, and the studies show that black men are actually in their children's life more than white men. Yes. But it was extensive research that I did, and it wasn't just a Google search, because everybody thinks that's credible research. But it's actually the number of studies that myself and my colleague did, and it's through various scholarly articles and databases that you need access to get it that maybe a layman person may not have access to. So it's through school and things like that you get research. But Google Scholar has a lot of actual research, and you can put in kind of the title, and then you can put in specific years, and that can give you the research. But black men are actually in their children's lives. Yes, amen to that.
Any more in-house?
Thank you for that.
How do a Christian deal with quality of life issues without sinning or feeling like a chump? Can this lead to a mental buildup of rage?
I'm trying to process that. I would love him to elaborate.
Would you mind elaborating? Go to the mic for me, please.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong.
We in church, so this is a no judgment zone. I know that for sure.
Absolutely. We
Okay.
just want to make sure we understand the question.
Yeah.
And what we can do, Malik, is
Hello?
let's set up upstairs, and I can have him answer a few of these questions for our online content. So let's do that, please.
Okay, us Christians have to deal with quality of life issues such as bad manners, people bumping into you, United States, excuse me, people riding on the sidewalks with bikes and whatnot. So how do we keep giving passes to people without feeling like a chump? And when do the elevator or it gets too much?
Yes.
Where, you know, now I'm ready to seriously hurt somebody. It might not be today, it might be tomorrow. Or you might be number 15. And on my scale of 14, I'm not giving up passes past 14. So how do a Christian go about their Christian walk without busting somebody upside their head?
Right.
So that's what.
Right. So, no, that's a great question.
That's fine,
And I would say extensive prayer life, because they really have to stay prayed up and asking God to really deliver for that area if it's a spirit of aggressiveness, anger, right? Because what's the underneath that, right? What's the belly? What's in the core issue? You know what I'm saying? So really looking at that. Why am I responding this way? And I get it that people do a lot of things. So what can I do to manage and navigate when someone has a wrongdoing? What would God tell me to respond to this? And I talk to God a lot, especially when I'm driving. Right? And when you're at work, you have to speak to God a lot and bite your tongue sometimes until it bleeds. Right? So it's really managing and dealing with that. But it's a real question. And it's people do deal with that, so I appreciate that honesty. But really working through those triggers, right? Because there may be a trigger, right? If someone responds away or driving poorly or things like that, and taking deep breaths. Deep breaths is really, really, really helpful. It prevents you from saying impulsive things, saying hurtful things. Right? So if you take a few deep breaths and you still want to respond like that, that means that you really want to say it. But after you calm down, do you still feel that same anger? Mm-hmm. So really just try that. Take a few deep breaths in and out and say, what do I really want to say? Do I want to say that? Do I want to respond that way? It's a lot of self-talk. A lot of managing impulsivity. We could be really impulsive people.
Yes, that's true. It's true.
Right? What you say?
Yep.
Right? We're really quick to respond. So really slowing down, building that self-awareness. Also, if I know that certain things anger me or trigger me, then I'm a little bit more intentional about being calm.
Yeah.
Like when I'm driving from Queens to Brooklyn to go to work and I know the traffic is going to be bad, like I know it every day, I'm intentionally, when I'm going to leave a little bit earlier, but also tell myself it's going to be traffic. There's nothing I can do about it. So I'm going to play my spiritual music on the way in and keep me calm. So also maybe play some music, some calm music or something like that. Or silence. Sometimes silence is good too. Or I love the Bible app. They have that guy that talk English, the English accent, and just listen to scriptures on while you drive it. You should be less inclined to respond.
All right, I want to do this last question, and then we'll put some questions out on social media. Those of you who are online who don't follow us, follow our pages so you can stay connected to this content. How do you handle the guilt that comes when you take time for yourself? When you're always making sure others are good around you? What do you do when you feel guilty for actually taking time for yourself?
Yeah, and that's a popular question.
Very, very much so.
Yeah, so I want everyone to leave with a couple of things. One, that self-awareness, I'm going to look at in myself, and I also want you to tell yourself that my self-care is non-negotiable. Like, we're not negotiating that. And identify where that guilt is coming from. Right? There's a reason for the guilt. Is it a source of trying to please others? Because you'll never please everyone. right? So really identifying, why do I feel guilty about doing something for me?
Yeah.
And do you feel you're deserving of taking care of yourself if you're pouring into others? You know, I have a lot of friends in leadership, and I always pray for them more, well, not more, but especially because you pour so much into other people. It's like, what do you leave for yourself?
It's true.
And do you take care of yourself? Pulling and pulling and pulling. I remember my bishop told me, he's like, you never ask me nothing. I'm like, I feel bad. Like, I don't want to bother you because I feel like you're giving so much to other people. So it's not a bad thing to take care of yourself. Because if you're well, then the people that you're taking care of is well. So I frame it that way. Like, if I take care of myself, then I can take care of everybody else.
You have one more?
How do you get someone to be more understanding and to not take criticism personally?
How much time you got?
I think, how do you get someone to be more understanding and to not take criticism personally?
Right. So that's a core, right, issue, right? So when we hear a criticism, our brain is registering that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Right? So that's coming from possibly childhood, right? And how are you framing this criticism? Does the person have trust in you, right? So sometimes we hear criticism from someone, but we don't trust you. Or we know you're no good. So it's really the source of where it's coming from, how you're framing it, and how the person is internalizing the criticism, right? Because it comes from a place of, I've been talking about my whole life, so here it goes again. So now, as the young man said, it turns out there's only so much I can take, so I'm going to lash out, right? So that person may need someone to talk to about the core, the issue where it stemmed from, right? From my childhood, I was told that I was this, I was that. So you become an adult, you continue to hear these things, right? So you don't want to hear it. And some people, even if they hear positive things, they hear negative things.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, so one is for that person who wrote that is, does the person feel safe with you? Have you built the capacity for safety for them to receive that suggestion, that criticism? Because I don't know anybody that received, come on, give me more criticism, tell me more about what I'm not good at. Like, no, you know what I'm saying? So it's like nobody's really hungry for that. So it's like, how do you frame that? How do you create a space for safety? To say, you know what, I would love to see more of, or this is what I would love to see more from you, and this is what I can do to support you in that. Like, it's all about language and how you frame and say things.
I love that. One more, and Bishop said we have to wrap up, so just one more, please.
How do you communicate effectively when you don't know what to say? Okay, I'll give you an example. Like my son, when he comes home from work, how was your day? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, it was fine. That's it. When I talk to my grandchildren, how's school? How you doing? I'm fine. Hi, Grandma. Everything is fine. That's it. I don't know how to go and take it beyond that.
Right. And when I talk to parents about that, asking open-ended questions, right? So that leaves, when you ask closed-ended questions, that's just yes or no. Tell me what made you smile today? What made you angry today? Who did you sit to at lunch today? Was there anybody that made you angry today? Like asking more intentional questions. What could have made today better for you? You can ask our children that. You can ask anybody that. I think even as adults, right? We'd be like, hey, how you doing? Really don't mean it. Be like, hey, how you doing? And we just still walking past the person. We don't give the person a chance to respond. All I see is the back of their head.
It's true.
So really having intentional conversation about, but be prepared for the response. You don't open it, so be prepared for the response, what you get back. I asked my 6-year-old, what was the best part of your day? He has two therapists as parents, so God help my 2 kids. But I asked them, what was the best part of your day? So really be intentional about the question that you're asking to get more of a response.
I love that, actually. I love that. All right, well, we're going to wrap up. Can we give Aaron a round of applause for being with us today? Thank you so much. We honor you, your wisdom, your kindness. It is my prayer, our sincere prayer as a church, that new doors open for you and that this is just the beginning. You've been on platforms, but more platforms, bigger platforms,
Amen. Thank
greater
you.
platforms.